Keir Starmer domestically, under a great deal of pressure from his own party in particular, has this state visit come at a good time for the Prime Minister?
Well, if you've had the last couple of weeks that Keir Starmer has had as Prime Minister and also just lost your ambassador to the US in circumstances which are rebounding on your own decision-making and on the government, anything is better than that. So there is an air of distraction. I think that the state visit allows Keir Starmer to kind of reset in terms of his communications. We're going to be seeing, instead of seeing pictures of Keir Starmer looking rather harried, we're going to be seeing pomp and circumstance. We're going to be seeing the carpet laid out. People, whether they like Donald Trump are neutral or abhor him, are always interested in what he does. So I think you see the transatlantic prism of Britain's relationships, which previously you could have said, well, that would be great, because that Peter Mandelson had been appointed to look after that. That's not something that I think Keir Starmer's hoping that we dwell on. It's a bit of a pause. It's not a solution, but it's a pause.
If I'd said to you 10 months or so ago, Anne, immediately after that presidential election, that Donald Trump and Keir Starmer would have struck up what seems to all intents and purposes to be a pretty productive, healthy, positive, friendly relationship, would you have been surprised? Because it's hard to imagine in some ways two men who are more different.
No, I wouldn't have been surprised. And I'll tell you why. Because actually, just looking in my diary, it's about 2 years ago since I first interviewed Keir Starmer at a meeting of the sort of centre-left clans, and it was in North America. That was the whole point. He wanted to show that he was engaging with the North American continent. Now, yes, it was a bit centre-lefty get-together. In those days, it was still Trudeau in Canada, and it was like, what are we going to do, we progressives, when we're in power? But what I got from it is whenever I asked a question about a possible return of Donald Trump and what was going to happen, is that Keir Starmer never lent into a lot of the fire and fury rhetoric of his own party, which is, well, that's never going to happen. He was always quite hedged on it.
So he's played a very long game.
I'm not surprised, no, if you ask me. I think, let's not be naive. This is about Britain's national interest. Yeah. It's not about who you want to go bowling with.
Well, when people say, yes, it's about the national interest, but they would have liked to see Keir Starmer do a bit like Emmanuel Macron has done, and be a little bit firm with Donald Trump and stand up to him a little bit more and call out some of the sort of more egregious things that he's said and done. And Keir Starmer's done none of that. Is that the right strategy, do you think? Is that the only strategy with Donald Trump?
Well, it depends when you were looking at Emmanuel Macron. I mean, one good thing about being French is you can, there's a lot of kind of switching and swaying. Macron has also swithered about more than I would hope that a British Prime Minister would do on Putin, So either you get someone who sometimes goes one way and goes another, and actually French statecraft has a kind of history of that and a role in that. But I don't think so. I mean, I've seen Friedrich Merz in Germany be very hostile to Trump when he came in, because he was very fed up, and rightly so. Yes. That Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, but effectively Donald Trump, just said, oh, well, there's this far-right party in your country, the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland. That's a kind of good thing. And it was when I said, no, it isn't.
But that's what I mean.
All leaders are calibrating here.
Starmer
Come on,
hasn't.
Ben.
Starmer hasn't, though. That's my point, really, Anne. I can't think of a single thing that Keir Starmer has said since Donald Trump was sworn in January that he could either be construed as any way negative about Donald Trump, and that is different to the likes of Merz and Macron and so on. And some people say, well, that's why he's had the success with Trump that those other leaders haven't. Other people say it's a sign of weakness.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think he chose a sort of clearer path through it, if you like. But let me put the question the other way around. What would it have achieved? Yep. If you know what you would achieve by having your moment, when you get applauded by people who don't like Donald Trump, but what does it mean? And what does it mean for any form of... Does it influence Donald Trump more on Ukraine? Probably not. Does it influence... Now, I'm not saying anything, or AI deals, or... I think there's one mistake. If you want me to be a bit more testing of this government, I think we've been sold a complete pup on the trade deal on steel. I mean, right. Our tariffs are not going to be as high as the EU, but then actually we have undue exposure to a quite old-fashioned steel industry we probably shouldn't be that attached to anyway. So if you ask me, like, where I think we have a degree of self-delusion, it's that 5% of tariffs on something you can't really sell very well in the world makes much difference. So yes, on that, I do think we have indulged a fantasy. But if you say to me, just to be a bit testing, like, if only you told him that you don't approve of him, that it would change him, it wouldn't. And if it was going to, it would have done in Trump 1.
Yes.
The reason people are quite quiet, relatively, is they kind of went through Trump 1 and realised he was back again.
But let's just touch just finally, Anne, on that, on the steel deal, on what Starmer actually has to show beyond a sort of lot of, ward music and sort of positive words from Trump. I say he's built up a good relationship with him. They seem to get on. I mean, there's also a case to be made that in terms of practicalities, Britain doesn't have a lot to show for that relationship.
Oh, I think we have a lot to show. I think we will get a longitudinal deal on AI. If you look at the big problem that Europe and anything that is not America has in the democratic world on AI, your problem is how do you plug it into other markets and into, basically even you'd be able to move your people around. Let's say you're an AI company, you're based in America and you want to have people go to and fro the UK at the moment, that's pretty hard. Let's say, like, best case analysis, you're in Cambridge in the UK in a big AI hub, but you've got these people who would like to spend 2 years in the US, but they don't really fancy having to sort of prove some exceptional talent visa. That, so all of that stuff is, I think, much more a contribution to the growth of the UK in the years ahead. Nuclear as well. Like, we are actually quite aligned in our sort of outlook in terms of how we can plug in our defence of nuclear. We are both under the nuclear umbrella, largely of the US in our case, but we have an independent nuclear capacity. The problem for Keir Starmer is these are really good ideas, right? It's just that the gains are very far down the line.
But you would
and the
say,
government wants wins now.
Yes.
But, if you ask me, like, would I rather be in a position where our AI business and technological business has been enhanced by this deal for a fairly paltry sum of taking a lot of horses and soldiers to Windsor? My answer would be yes.
So some of the fawning, some of the cozying up to Trump, a lot of it has paid off and it has benefited us and our businesses and our consumers.